Hey Pixels, I'm back with a brand new web design tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to design and prototype a one-page fruit-themed website in Adobe XD. This website design is in celebration of the brand new fruit photo pack that you can download over on the newly redesigned xopixel.com. This fruit photo pack features 120 fruit cutouts that you can use for your next creative project. Be sure to follow along with this tutorial by downloading this project file over on xopixel.com because remember, practice makes xopixel perfect. First, I just want to briefly touch on the mini UI kit that I designed for this website. As you can see, I already established the typography for the website, including the fonts for the headings, logo, body, navigation, and even buttons. I also picked out the color palette. I made a video on how you can create a color palette, or at least my approach on how I create color palettes for my UI designs, so I will link that in the description below. This one-page website consists of only a few components which are so easy to design. FYI, components are reusable elements that are found throughout a UI, like a button, navbar, or even specific layouts that are used throughout a UI. To design these components, I of course had to design the entire website and explore different layout options and tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak some more. And when I finally was set on a layout after a million design tweaks, I was able to break parts of the website into reusable components, and this is what we have here. So for instance, we have a navbar component, two section components, which consist of a horizontal and vertical layout, and even a button component within the section components. I also have a component for interactive cards, which I named fact cards, because they are essentially cards that will have different facts about each fruit, which will be revealed on hover. And if I select this component, and you can see there's two states here, so there's a default state and a hover state. Finally, here we have all the image that will be used throughout this one-page website. Again, these are fruit cutouts from the brand new fruit cutout photo pack, which you can download on the redesigned xopixel.com. So that was just a brief overview of the UI kit for this one-page website. Now, let's design the website. So this artboard has already been set up. As you can see, there's all these sections, which I will go through shortly. But essentially, this is the 1920 sized artboard, and you can grab this artboard in XD by opening up the artboard panel and selecting Web 1920. And I also have the following layout grid settings. So I have the gutter width set to 40, 12 columns, and the margin on either side is 140 pixels. This one-page website is a beginner's guide to fruit and will have some very beginner-friendly content all about fruits. The wireframe of this website consists of 7 sections. At the top, we'll have the navbar. Then we'll have the hero section. After the hero, we'll have a definition section, which will define what a fruit is. Then there will be an anatomy of a fruit section, a nutrition section, and a section that has fun facts all about fruits. Lastly, the website will have a call to action on where you can buy fruit. So let's get started. All right, so we are going to start designing the navbar. So first things first, I'm just going to delete this here, and I'm going to draw out a rectangle. I don't want a border, so I'm just going to remove the border, and I'm going to color it blue. So essentially on the left-hand side, we're going to have the logo. In the middle, we're going to have our nav links, and then on the right-hand side, we're going to have a download button. So I'm just going to turn on the layout grid so I have a sense of where I'm aligning everything. And I'm just going to write fruit, and that's our logo. Well, not exactly. I mean, I do have to apply the character style. So with this selected, I'm going to select the logo character style, and we have our logo. So there's 5 nav links. So I am just going to grab the type tool and write out all of our nav links. So there is home. So there's home. I'm going to apply the nav link, character style. I'm going to press Command D on my keyboard to duplicate it. And then we're going to write out our second nav link, which is definition. Command D, anatomy. And then nutrition. Facts. So I kind of want to make sure that these are evenly spaced out. So I'm just going to select them all and hit Command G on my keyboard to group these nav links. And then right where it says stack, I'm going to enable that. And then I am going to make sure that horizontal stack is selected. And I want to make sure that there's 40 pixels of padding in between each nav link. So I'm just going to hit 40 or write out 40, hit enter. And now I have exactly 40 pixels of padding in between each nav link. So let me just make sure that's aligned to the center. There we go. All right, so now all we need to do is just apply or add our download button or call to action. So I already have the button components, but I mean, I guess I can show you how I designed that because it's so easy. So it's essentially just a white rectangle. And I'm just going to remove the border. I'm going to give it a border radius of 4 pixels. And then I'm just going to write download, apply the button character style. And right now, the padding for this button is really uneven. So I'm just going to select the text, select the rectangle, hit Command G to group it. And then where it says padding, this is going to allow me to really gain control on how I want to pad this component or this element. So right and left sides, I want it to be 20 pixels of padding. And then top and bottom, I just want it at 16. And there you go. So that's how we created this component. But it's a component, so I'm just going to delete that. And I'm going to write download. And I don't know if you saw that, but it actually adjusts. Isn't that cool? You can use padding, and it kind of acts like padding in web development. If you know anything about code or development, you always want to give some padding to your elements. So to do that, I'm just going to group all the elements within this navbar. So the button, the nav links, and the logo. Now that this is all a group, I want to group this with the background container or the section. So I'm just going to select that, press Command G, and I'm going to turn on padding. And I want to make sure that the padding at the top and bottom of the navbar is 20 pixels. So you can just make sure top and bottom is 20. There we go. So it just helps to make sure that everything is even and symmetrical and everything just looks good, right? Now that I know that it's even and I'm done with this component, I could just turn off padding really. All right, so that's the navbar component. Again, this was what I built in the UI kit that I showed earlier. So I can just, with this selected, hit the plus sign in components to turn it into a component. But I mean, I already have this navbar as a component. So, it's right here already. So that's the navbar. Now let's design the hero section. So our hero section is where we're going to introduce, what our website is all about. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a beginner's guide to fruit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to first delete this hero section here. We don't need this anymore. So I'm going to grab the section vertical component because this is the hero section. It's going to be slightly different. But that's the beauty of using components, because you can adjust it in case there is, maybe a section that's slightly different. So again, this section is so easy to make. I mean, it consists of a blue rectangle. We have our heading text, we have the body text, and a button. Now, in this case, I don't need the button, so I'm just going to delete it. And I don't know if you noticed, but this kind of snapped up. And it's because I'm using vertical stacks in XD. Now, I did demo how you can use that to the navigation. That's how we, made sure that there's an equal amount of padding between each nav link. And this is the same thing, but vertically. I want to make sure that there is an even amount of padding between the text elements. In this case, it's 20 pixels. If I hover over it, it's 20 pixels. So yeah, I'm just using the vertical stacks in XD. Now, this is going to be in H1. So I'm just going to make sure that this is H1. There we go. And I actually want this body text to be the eyebrow style. And the eyebrow is essentially the text that's before the heading or a heading. So I'm just going to move this up. And that's the beauty of stacks. It kind of just adjusts accordingly. So I love that. And let me just select it, make sure it's aligned. There we go. I'm just going to drag out this component for now. And adjust, more precisely when we're kind of near the end. All right, so I'm just gonna first change the heading to say the beginner's guide to fruit. And it's aligned to the center. The text is aligned to the center. There we go. And I actually want this eyebrow to say brought to you by xopixel, just in case you forgot. All I need now is some cool photos of fruit. So I'm gonna head on over to the images and I'm gonna grab a banana and I'm just gonna duplicate it because I want to make sure all my components are still here. So I'm just gonna hit Command D as I select each fruit. So let's grab an avocado, a peach, let me get a watermelon. Let me just group these images together because I want to export it when I'm developing the website. So I'm just going to group it so that way it exports as one big image. And I also want to make sure again that there's that 120 pixels of padding at the top and bottom. So I'm just going to group everything. So this is all in one group because it was the component. So I'm just going to double click into this group and paste that image that I created. And I'm actually just going to ungroup the components and I'm just going to make sure everything is grouped. And I'm going to enable padding. And for top and bottom, I'm just going to set it to 120. And I already know that it's 120 top and bottom, so I'm just going to disable it now. So that's the hero section. Now let's move on to designing the definition section. Okay, so let's design the definition section of our website. So first, let's just delete this. This is where we are going to define what a fruit is. So earlier on, I did mention I have some components that I created from designing the website, and there are certain sections that have a very similar layout. So in this case, a lot of the sections have the section horizontal layout, and this is the component for that. So this section consists of, an eyebrow above the heading and then some body copy to the right-hand side of this container. And then the actual section has a, dark blue background and it's a borderless rectangle. That's kind of what the background is. So for the future sections, I'm just going to use this component, but since this is the first section, I'll show you from scratch how I designed it. So first things first, I'm just going to hit R on my keyboard and draw out a borderless rectangle, color dark blue. Now I'm going to turn on the layout grid and I'm going to create the first text object. So in this case, I'm just going to write eyebrow because that's the eyebrow. And I'm going to align it to the second column in the layout grid. And then right below it, I'm just going to write out this is a heading. And I'm going to use the H2 style. Because remember, you only want to have one H1 on a page. So we already have that H1 in our hero section. So all the following sections are just going to be H2s. So I'm spacing it out to make sure that, there's 20 pixels of padding in between the eyebrow and the heading. And then I'm just going to duplicate this text object to the right-hand side. And I already have a paragraph on, what a fruit is. So I'm just going to paste it, but I'm going to have to apply the body copy. And I'm going to switch from auto width to auto height. And I'm just going to make sure this is also kind of adjusted to the layout grid a lot more. So just cleaning up the width here. And I want to make sure this is aligned to the left. Okay, so this is going to be one group. So I'm just going to select the eyebrow and the heading, press Command G. And I want this grouped with the body text. So first I'm just going to make sure this is aligned vertically. And then I am going to hit Command G to group this. So now this is one block. And now, it's just a matter of grouping this, background with the copy here. So I'm just going to select them both, hit Command G. I'm going to turn off the layout grid. Then I'm going to turn on padding. And again, for all my sections, I want to make sure that there's 120 pixels of padding on the top and bottom. So I'm just going to write 120 for the bottom, 120 for the top. And that's how I created the section horizontal component. See how easy that was? So now that I have designed that, I'm just going to update the headings accordingly. So let's make this say definition. And let me make sure this is aligned to the left text. And then we're going to update the heading to say what exactly is a fruit. And now I'm just going to grab some images of fruit and I will place it below and kind of arrange them. Again, no particular order, just whatever looks good. So I've selected the photos. I'm going to click into the section. So as you can see, because I had padding turned on, it's kind of getting wonky. So I'm just going to turn that off. And I'm just going to resize everything. There we go. So it's not as crazy because I was kind of going crazy. And let's update this heading. What exactly is the fruit? All right, so I turned on the layout grid, and this is just so I'm kind of guiding how I'm placing all these images. I don't want to put the images in the margins, basically, so that's why I'm turning it on, just to help me. There we go. So I'm just going to select all of these fruits. And I'm going to hit Command G to group it. That way, when I'm exporting everything to develop the website, it's just one image. Right. So I am very happy with how this section turned out. And I will right, so that's the definition section. I just tweaked it a little and I think now everything looks good. I am very happy with it. So now let's move on to the anatomy section. So the anatomy section is very similar to the definition section. And now, because we have our component already built, it's going to be so easy for us to just modify it for this specific section. So first things first, I'm going to grab the section horizontal component. And I'm just going to update the copy. So this is going to say anatomy, the anatomy of a fruit. I'm going to paste some copy here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this image here. And this is actually an image that I designed in XD. It was really easy to make. I just used a photo of an avocado and then I drew some lines around it, you know, an oval. So I'm going to select it, press Command C to copy it. I'm going to double click into this container or this group, press Command V, just to paste it inside of this group or this component. So make sure it's spaced out evenly. I like to have 80 pixels of padding between the copy and an image below. And then I will adjust the background accordingly. So that's it for the anatomy section. It was so easy because we already had our component built. So now let's move on over to the nutrition section. So I'm going to select this, delete it. And just like our anatomy section, again, we have our components. It just makes everything so easy. So I'm going to grab the section horizontal component, place it here, update the text. So this is going to say nutrition, fruits, nourish body. And I'll paste in some info here. And I'm going to head on over to my images. Let's grab an orange, an apple, and a lime. I'm going to hit Command C. I'm going to click into this component group, hit Command V. So you can see by that green bounding box that it's within the component group. And I am going to turn on the layout grid and just kind of arrange everything. So I'm just going to arrange the fruits so that it looks good. Again, this time I want to make sure everything is on the same line. And I'm going to drag out the background. So, all right, so that's the nutrition section. Now let's move on to the facts section. Okay, so this is the facts section and we're switching it up a little bit. So we're going to be using the section vertical component as well as the fact card, which is, you know, the little cards that have different facts about each fruit. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this here and let's drag this section vertical component. So the section vertical component consists of, you know, a heading at the top, body copy, and a button. Now in this case, we don't need the button, so I'm just going to delete the button and I'm just going to update the copy. So I want this heading to say facts and then some instructions. So hover over each fruit or hover over each fruit to read a fun fact. So now that I have that, I'm actually just going to ungroup components and I'm going to drag out the background to make room for the cards. So I'm going to turn on the layout grid and I'm going to grab the first component. So Again, this component is so easy to make, and it consists of an image of a fruit, an ellipses, and then we have, the hover state. When you hover over it, it has a heading and then space to add, the fact, and then of course the background. So really quickly, I'm going to show you how I created this from scratch. So I used the layout grid to help guide me on sizing the background or the circle, and then I colored it blue. I'm going to remove the border, and then I am just going to grab an image of a fruit. So let's just grab this watermelon, and I'm going to shrink this down like so. To constrain the image size, I'm holding down Shift and Option on my keyboard so that I'm resizing it proportionally. So that's all I did to get the default state, but we need to also have a hover state. So I just duplicated the circle again. I'm just going to remove the fruit photo. Let me group this. So this is the first state here. So for the hover state, I'm just going to write fruit. This is going to be, I guess, where the heading goes. So in this case, actually, let me just write watermelon. And then I'll select the H3 character style. And then below it, this is where the fact goes. That's going to be the body. I'm going to apply the body character style. Oops. And I want to change this to auto height. I'll kind of size that out some more. Make this 20. Align to center. Center align the text. So I'm going to group the text. Now group the background. Now we have our two different states. So this is the default state and the hover state. So right where it says component, I'm just going to hit the plus icon, and it's going to create the component. So this is the default state, and to add the hover state, I'm going to, right where it says default state, hit the plus icon, select hover state. And now that it's in its hover state, I want to kind of recreate this. So we're using the same background, so I don't need to copy this whole thing. I mean, I could, but it's just literally changing the text, not the background. So in its hover state, I'm going to delete the watermelon, and I'm pasting the copy here. I'm just positioning it like that. So that way it's, we have the two different states. So this is the default state, we have our image, and then when we hover over it, we have the hover state. So that's how this component was created. Easy, easy, easy. I'm just going to delete that because we already have our component. And I'm just going to hit Command D to duplicate this more times. There we go. I'm going to select them all, hit Command D, and move it down to the bottom. Again, let me just make sure this is 120. So now it's just a matter of, let me just make sure this is spaced out. Let's make this 80. So now I'm just going to update each component so that there is a different fruit for each one. So again, I'm just going to copy all of this, Command C, paste it this side like so. We already have the banana, so we don't need that. But I'm just going to copy each one delete the banana and paste it within this component group, like so. So we have all our components updated. We have all our fruits. This looks so good. All we need to do now is the final section, which is the call to action section. All right, so we are on the final section, which is the call to action section. So first things first, let's just remove this, and we are going to grab the section vertical component. So this section has everything we need. It has a heading, some copy, and then the button. So this final section, I want to prompt users to buy fruit. So I'm just going to write buy fruit as the heading. And for the body copy, I'm just going to write get your pack of 120 high res fruit cutouts on xopixel.com, and then we're going to add a download button like so. So I'm just going to drag out the background, and I want to put a nice photo of fruits just at the bottom. So I already have that photo right here, and essentially it's just a mask of photos. So I put all the fruits kind of in a row, and then let me just show you really quickly. So I have all these photos that I placed in a row, and then I drew a white borderless rectangle, and I placed it halfway across each fruit, and then I selected everything, right clicked, and then I hit mask with shape. And that's how I got that. So I'm just going to place it right at the bottom. And there we go. So we completed our call to action section. That was the last section. And I think this looks so good. Designed all the sections for this one-page website, but there's one final touch that I want to add. So as you can see, I have these fruits that they're like kind of blending into the background, and I actually want to put this as a background for this website. So really quickly, just how I got this to look like this, because it's not like this normal fruit photo. It's like blue, and it's kind of blending in. So all I did was I actually added a adjustment layer to this group of fruits. So all you need to do is just select an image. So this is what it looks like if it's normal, but I just selected luminosity, and then I set the transparency of this image to 50%. So this is at 100% and at normal, but then if I set it to luminosity 50%, we got this. So really easy. So to add this as a background, I'm just going to hit Command D to duplicate it, and then I'm just going to send this back. And then I'm just going to kind of position it. I'm just going to fix the layer order of this. And then I'm going to set it to 20% opacity, even more. I don't want it to make it hard to read any text or anything. There we go. So it just adds a nice touch to the website. And I think this looks really good. All right, so this is the final website design.
So that's how you design a one-page fruit-themed website. If you followed along with this tutorial, use the hashtag xopixelperfect. I love to see what you create. As always, be sure to hit that thumbs up if you enjoyed this video and learned something new. Subscribe to xopixel for more great tutorials for you to practice web design, graphic design, and code. I'll see you in the next video.